Hi everyone, welcome to iFashi. In this course, we'll be teaching you how to make a wide leg pleated pant trouser. As we know, we have different types of pant trouser. We have the straight corporate pant trouser, we have the flare palazzo pant trouser, we have the cargo pants and the pleated pant trouser. In this course, we'll be teaching us how to make a wide leg palazzo pleated pant trouser. So we are going to start with the drafting and the cutting of this pant trouser in this video. Here is the pattern paper that we'll be drafting on, and here is the 3 yards fabric that we'll be using for this project. I've gone ahead to join my pattern paper to get the desired length I'll be needing for this pant trouser. And on this pattern paper, the first thing I'm going to do is to come down with 1 inch from the beginning of my paper to get the straight line that will be serving as my waist line, where all of my measurements will be taken from. So I'll rule out that line and I'll label it the waist line. Now, after getting out the waistline, we are going to determine how wide we want this pant trouser to be. It's a wide leg pant trouser. It's not fitted. So we're going to be adding to our waist measurement. Here, I'll be using 15 inches for the width. You can go ahead and use 18 if you want it to come out wider than the result of what we made. So I'll be imputing 15 on my waist measurement, and then I'll come down to take my crotch line from the waistline. To get your crotch line, I guess we know that we are to divide our hip measurement by 4. Now, because this is not a tight fitted pant, we are going to add 1 inch to our hip measurement divided by 4. So my hip measurement divided by 4 is 11. I'll add 1 inch to make it 12, and that 12 will be my crotch measurement. Now, from the crotch measurement, we are going to go up with 2 inches to determine the hip line of our pant trouser. So I'll mark out these 2 lines and I'll rule them out and label the 2 lines. Now we have our waistline, our hip line, and our crotch line out. The next thing we're going to do now is to take the width of our pant trouser, how wide you want it to be. And we already took 15 inches for the waist to determine the width. We're going to be repeating this 15 inches on the hip line and on the crotch line, and we'll connect them together using our straight ruler. Now, after connecting these lines together, the next is to take our crotch extension on the center front. Normally, if we're making other outfits, the beginning of our paper is our center front. But for pants trouser, this straight line here is our center front. So from this straight line, we are going to come out with 2.2 inches for our crotch extension. How did I get 2.2 inches? Please measure your hip and divide it by 20 for front. Then for back, you divide it by 10. So I'm using 2.2 because 44 divided by 20 is 2.2. So I came out on this, my crotch line, with 2.2, and I came out with 0.5 inch on the hip line. The 0.5 is standard. It's just this 2.2 that is not standard. Measure yourself. So after coming out with 2.2 and 0.5, you use your curve ruler to connect it together upwards to that straight line. We now have the crotch part of our trouser out already. Now, the next thing is to work on this waistline. For the waistline, on the front parts, we are going to come down. This is the center front, the straight line part. I said it before. So we're going to come down with 1 inch on this center front part and slant it to meet the hip part of our trouser. That's the side front. So I came down with 1 inch from the center front and slanted it upwards to meet the side front. We are going to cut this off. This helps your trouser on the front part sit very well on your waist. So now for the side front part, we are going to come inwards with 1 inch as well and slant it to meet your hip line, because our hip and the waist is not straight up like this pattern paper. So we are coming in with 1 inch on the waistline to slant it to meet the hip, to bring out the shape from your waist to your hip. Now we have the upper part of this trouser out already. The only remaining thing is to work on the allowance that we're going to be pleating, and to do that, we're going to take what we have on this waist. Now I have 14 inches just because I cut off 1 inch at the beginning, right? Now from this 14 inches, I'm going to be taking out my waist measurement to know the remaining allowance, and from this 14 inches now, I have 4 extra inches added to my waist. Now from the beginning of this paper, the center front part, this straight line part, we're going to go inwards by 4.5 inches. Do not use up to these 6 inches that I took here. I later corrected myself because the 6 inches made my pleat to go towards the side front. So please come in from the center front of your pattern paper, come inward with 4.5, which is the normal place that we use to take our front dart on our pant trouser. So allow that pleat to be on that dart line to make it very fine. So after coming inwards with 4.5, you're going to fold your paper towards the side front, because this is how your pleat is going to be on your fabric. So folding this paper will break your line that you have on your waistline. So I'm just going to highlight this line back. We are definitely going to open up this pattern paper to cut our fabric, but I just want the line to be aligned. That's why I'm correcting the broken lines. Now after that, take your waist measurement to be sure you still have your 1 inch allowance. Then on the hip line, take your hip measurement divided by 4. On this crotch line, take your thigh measurement. My thigh measurement is 26. 26 divided by 2, I have 13. So on this crotch line, make sure you have up to your thigh measurement divided by 2. Now after that, we're almost done with the drafting of this front piece. We've taken the crotch extension, we've come down with our waist slants, and then we're also done with the pleating on the waist part. There's no need to be taking your knee contouring for this trouser because it's free on the down part. So now that we're done with the upper part, we're going to go straight to the full length of our pant trouser. And to get this full length, remember to minus your waistband from the top of your paper. Place your tape on the waist, minus your waistband. I'm using 1.5, and then I'll take 50 inches as my full length. I'm marking on 51 because I need 1 inch extra to do the folding allowance of the hem of my pant trouser. So I minus 1.5 inch from the waist, and I took 51 all the way down to the end of my pattern paper for the full length of my trouser. I hope you understand so far. It's very, very easy and straight to the point. If you're missing out anything, kindly take the video back and watch it again. Now, after taking the full length of your trouser, come to this hip line and measure what you have on your hip line, not on the crotch line. Your hip measurement. Remember, we used 15. The 15, we are still going to be maintaining that 15 on the hem of our trouser because it's wide from the beginning to the end. The pleats will now make the waist tight, but the down part has to be wide as well. So I'm marking 15 on the full length of my trouser, and then I'll connect it with my ruler to meet my crotch extension. We know this crotch part is bigger than 15 because it's going to enter into our crotch. So I'm going to make a connection straight up from the full length to meet the crotch extension point. And then we have our pant trouser ready. There's no knee contour for this pant trouser because it's not the regular corporate straight or tight pants trouser. This one is flare and free on the knee. That's why we went straight down from the crotch down to the full length. Now I'm going to cut out the front piece and go straight into the drafting of the back piece. Please watch closely to see the part that I'm cutting off. I cut off the slant I have on the side front. I haven't cut off this upper part that we came down on the waistline. I'll be needing it for the back, that's why I've not cut it out yet. So I'll introduce this pattern paper that we'll be using for the back piece and then place the front piece on top. Please ensure you have allowance on the sides of this back pattern. After placing your front piece on the back pattern paper, ensure you have extra allowance on the sides. On the crotch part, make sure you have up to 3 inches allowance, and on the side front, you can have up to 1 inch or 1.5, it's fine. On the upper part as well, make sure you have up to 2 inches allowance. Now, the first thing we're going to do is to go up with 1.5 on this waistline from the slanted line. Use 1.5 from the slanted line upwards to determine the waistline of your back piece. Before, we will now cut off this one that we don't need for this front part. The back of our waist is usually higher than the front because this part of the back is the part that sits in between the butts. So make sure it is higher so that it doesn't start pulling down. The next thing we're going to do now is to work on the crotch part. Remember, for the front piece, we divided our hip measurement by 20 to get 2.2. Now we're going to divide that same hip measurement by 10 to get the back crotch extension. After dividing it by 10, place your answer starting from this straight line, not from the end of your front piece, starting from this straight line that went up to the waist. Then impute your answer there and use your curve ruler to connect it to meet the 0.5 inch we came out with on the hip line. After that, you can now add your allowance to the sides. For the side back, 1 inch allowance is enough from the waistline, from the hip line downwards. While for the center back, which is the part that carries this crotch part, 1.5 inch allowance is okay. So we're going to impute that 1.5 inch all the way down from the crotch to the full length of the pant trouser, and then we'll impute 1 inch for the side back. Please take note, this side back is the part that carries your hip. Don't be confused when I say side or center. Center is the part that carries this crotch, and side is the part that is on the hip. So both back and front has side back and side front, center back and center front. So we're going to extend our 1 inch and 1.5 inch on both sides all the way down to the full length of our trouser before we remove the front piece. Now we have our back piece and our front piece. So I'm going to cut off the excess on the sides of the back piece before we remove the front piece. Watch closely to see where I am cutting so that you don't get confused. And after cutting off, I'm going to use my tracing wheel to trace out the lines I have on this front piece on top of my back piece, because I will be keeping this pattern paper for future use. So these lines, I'll need to repeat them for the back. So I'll use my tracing wheel to mark out the crotch line and the hip line before I'll now use my marker to highlight these lines to be showing on the back piece as well. Now we have our back and our front piece. The next thing now is to go ahead and cut out this pattern paper on top of the fabric that we'll be working with for this pant project. Now I'll place my fabric on fold, then place my pattern paper on top of it. After placing my pattern paper on top, I'll secure it down with a pin so that it doesn't start moving or shifting when I start cutting. So after holding it down with a pin, then we'll cut out our back and front piece. Endeavor to get up to 3 yards for this your pant trouser if you're between size 10 to 14, because normally 2 yards is enough to cut a pant trouser for a size 10 to 14, but because this pant trouser is wide and pleated, 2 yards is not enough. Also, remember to add your seam allowance when you are cutting on fabric. Now, after cutting out this pattern on fabric, we're going to take it to the sewing machine and start joining all of the pieces together. But that will be in our next video. We have come to the end of the drafting part of this wide leg pleated pants trouser. So in our next video, we'll be doing the joining and the stitching of all of the pieces together. So thank you so much for watching to the end of this video. I'll see you in the next one.